From pushing efforts towards a ceasefire agreement between Russia and Ukraine to removing the Secret Service protection for his predecessor's children or a brewing standoff with the judicial branch in the United States, U.S. President Donald Trump continues to dominate the narrative both at home and abroad. Trump's Justice Department faced a deadline Tuesday to provide a federal judge with details on the deportation of planeloads of Venezuelans on the weekend, which appeared to defy the judge's temporary order banning their removal from the country. Trump has since called for the judge to be impeached as fears grow of a constitutional crisis in the United States. To unpack all of this, let's speak to our U.S. correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Sherwin, lots to talk about, especially when you look at what has been taking place. Let's begin with the latest on the talks between U.S. President Donald Trump as well as Russian President Vladimir Putin. What have we learned from what appears to have been an hours-long conversation between the two leaders?
Well, the short answer to that, Bongiwe, is nothing yet. They apparently are still going, or the call might now have just ended. We have not received an official readout of the conversation or what might have been decided between the presidents of the United States, Donald Trump, and the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, but a lot of expectation here. Given the energy with which Donald Trump has approached this meeting, he is very optimistic that a peace deal is in the offing, at least, at the very least, in the short term, a 30-day ceasefire, which Ukraine has already agreed to. Russia was presented with the similar proposal by Steve Witkoff, the special envoy of the U.S. president who visited Moscow last week. Putin, in principle, agreed to the ceasefire agreement, but had some concerns, wanted root causes to be addressed, wanted security guarantees, similar to what Ukraine is seeking from the United States, right? The question now becomes, what are the compromises going to be on each side? There are certain red lines that we expect from both sides. The Ukrainians, President Volodymyr Zelensky has made it quite clear that they believe that Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty needs to be respected, that is sacrosanct, and that Russia has to return some of the territories it's annexed or has occupied since the beginning of this war more than 3 years ago now. And so those are some of the details we'll be hearing, likely from President Trump later today. He's expected to be in the Oval Office later, signing some executive orders. And as history teaches us, that'll be in front of the media, and then he'll likely take a number of questions. Or we could very soon get a post from him on Truth Social giving us some insight into what might have been agreed. But right now, we don't have anything to confirm other than this meeting happened, and it went for a very long time. Started at around 4 p.m. your time, 10 a.m. Eastern, has been going on for about 3 hours. So we imagine much has been discussed. The question is, has much been agreed? We'll certainly keep you posted. Especially given some of those sticking points, Sherwin. And to another matter that some experts have been warning of is that of a constitutional crisis in the United States. This after, President Trump's Department of Justice appeared to ignore a federal judge order blocking the deportation of Venezuelans to El Salvador over the weekend. So the administration, though, right, has also since attacked the judge who is in the middle of this case currently. What else do we know? Yeah, it's a big story to watch. And remember, the background here is that pivotal Supreme Court ruling last year that essentially said that sitting presidents cannot be held liable for or taken to court, certainly for their official acts. And so the argument then becomes, is every act, certainly led by the president here, can that be remedied by judicial oversight? And that is a question that we continue to ask ourselves here. At the core of this issue is the president over the weekend, Bongiwe, invoking the 1798 law, the Alien Enemies Act, which essentially allows the president to imprison and or remove or deport non-citizens in times of war without due process. So this is a proclamation that the president signed over the weekend that allowed for the deportation of suspected gang members, Venezuelan gang members, that was then challenged in a federal court before the federal judge, the chief judge of the District of Columbia, James Boasberg. James Boasberg, from the bench on Saturday, ordered that the deportation of the 238 suspected Venezuelan gang members be stopped and that any planes that were already in the air, deporting them, be turned around and returned to the United States. That didn't happen. And that now is raising concerns as to whether the Department of Justice, Donald Trump's Department of Justice, willfully ignored the order of a federal judge. This is litigation that is before this judge. It is continuing. He is due to get answers. He certainly has ordered the Justice Department's lawyers to appear before him today because he wants details as to when those flights departed the United States. That will give him a clearer idea of the timeline and whether or not his verbal order from the bench on Saturday was ignored. This was President Trump on this issue, and then two legal experts also weighing in. Watch.
This is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level. They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. It's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals, murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion.
The reason that the president is invoking the Alien Enemies Act is to bypass those due process protections that exist in immigration law. This wartime authority has never been interpreted to include due process protections for individuals who are the citizens or natives of a country with which we're at war. And so even if a person is not actually a member of Tren de Aragua, just the government is accusing them of that without evidence, Trump is hoping that that will be enough for him to put people into detention and then deport them out of the country. So deporting people who we actually don't know what they've done, deporting people who very well may be innocent.
The larger issue is the Trump administration seems invested in making this a fight. And that really does raise this huge question of what happens if the executive branch can get away with defying court orders. I don't think, non-compliance with one order in one case is necessarily the end of the rule of law. But the question is, what is to compel the government to comply in future cases? Because in a world in which the government can pick and choose which court orders it wants to comply with, the law is going to mean whatever the president says, not whatever the courts say.
So, Bongiwe, as this case now plays itself out in front of this federal judge as to whether his order was violated or not, Trump is attacking the judge. He's called him a radical left lunatic of a judge. He calls him a troublemaker and agitator who was sadly appointed by former President Barack Hussein Obama. I'm just quoting from the president's post on social media. He also goes on to say that this judge, like many other crooked judges I'm forced to appear before, should be impeached. This then saw the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice John Roberts, issue a very short statement, a very rare statement just moments ago. Let me just read you very briefly what he says. For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. So encouraging the President of the United States and the Department of Justice, if they agree with the ruling of this federal judge, to then appeal the decision and go through that process rather than attacking the judges in the way they've been doing over the last number of hours.
Quite interesting, Sherwin. And finally, we see that President Trump has ordered the removal of the Secret Service protection of both former President Joe Biden's adult children, and that's Hunter and Ashley. And we understand that this was brought to his attention by a journalist yesterday who asked why Hunter Biden was still receiving Secret Service protection, pointing out that he was currently on holiday here in South Africa, which immediately caught Trump's attention. Surprise, surprise. What more do we know?
Well, the president was asked this question. He was touring the Kennedy Center in Washington yesterday, and he was asked by a journalist if he was aware that Hunter Biden had received protection from up to 18 Secret Service agents while he was in South Africa. This caught President Trump's attention, asking, he's always in South Africa right now, and said he would then look into the issue. He also talked about how South Africa was on a watch list, asking the journalist if he knew about the bad things that were happening in South Africa that the Trump administration had taken action against. against the Republic of South Africa, and then later on social media posted a decision essentially saying that he had withdrawn the Secret Service protection for both Hunter Biden, who is married to a South African, is likely accompanying his wife to her home country, and his sister Ashley. Quote, please be advised, effective immediately, Hunter Biden is no longer to receive Secret Service protection. Likewise, Ashley Biden, who has 13 agents, has been taken off the list. But also in this tweet, he talks about how Hunter Biden is currently vacationing in, of all places, South Africa, where the human rights of people have been strenuously questioned. I guess, a reference to what he said in that executive order he signed earlier this year, but certainly piquing the president's interest here in the United States, just the mention of South Africa, Bongiwe.
Interesting times ahead, hey? And I wonder what's next on the agenda. Keen to hear how that phone call then wraps up, because a lot of people still looking to see if the sticking points are going to be ironed out, or are we now going back to square one to see more of the same. But sure, thank you so much for that update. That's U.S. Correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease there, bringing us the very latest from a very busy United States.